Chapter 1150. Am I awake? Am I reading the same story that I've been reading or watching for the past 1000 plus episodes and chapters? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? You know how the chapter which revealed the bounties of the emperors and first told the story of the God Valley incident and how that chapter was called Ultimate? Well, let's take the title of Ultimate and multiply it by like 1,000, and that's what this is. And speaking of God Valley, quickly, what an episode 1130 in the anime. The small additions to Kuma's story, everyone's entrances, and some new soundtracks. The Rock's Pirates OST gave me Pirates of the Caribbean vibes. Amazing episode, although who cares about that now that this, whatever the heck this is happening in the manga. Color spread first and finally 30 cover story pages after Kinemon first tasked Yamato with this mission. We have arrived in Hakumai and Yasui's sword has been returned to Enma's shrine. Ulti and page 1 are there as well, of course, and notice page 1's robe has that very same symbol of the sun that we see in Kuma's family church, Nika's shield, and we've seen the symbol elsewhere in Wano as well. So I wonder if this means anything specifically for page 1 or if it is just more of like a hint or a reminder of Wano's role in the bigger picture. So that's technically the pilgrimage done now. It was Kinemon himself who asked Yamato to go on the pilgrimage and deliver the sword, so that now means the title of this cover story has been fulfilled, but the journey around Wano has not. And although that journey isn't the title of this cover story, that was still Yamato's initial intention when it started, so I feel like this should now mark a turning point in the cover story where it shifts to some more topical, impactful content, like whatever happens here on out is gonna be the stuff that matters in the bigger picture. Now for the main event, with the main event being the entire chapter because the focus remains solely here on Imu and their actions. And we see Imu in Gunko's body. I am just gonna say Imu from now on for the sake of simplicity. Shockingly, what a surprise, they have Conqueror's Haki. The ruler of the entire world has Conqueror's Haki. Who would have guessed it? They unleash a huge wave of it that knocks out the kids and even some of the adult giants. So for the power scalers, you'll remember that in the Navy, giants are automatically given the rank of Vice Admiral due to their natural strength, and back on Egghead, the blast of Joyboy's Conqueror's Haki knocked out everyone not named Kizaru, so up to and including Vice Admirals. So while Imu may be scared of Joyboy and everything that name has symbolized and represented for the past 800 years, Imu is definitely still just as strong, if not stronger, depending on how you think the ancient war played out. And on top of that, the question still remains as to whether they are even able to utilize their full power, given that they are currently inhabiting Gunko's body, which might have possibly put limiters or something on the amount of power and strength they're able to output. And they use a summoning circle, a much smaller version of one that has what looks to be two cannons sticking out of it, which they use to keep the giants in their place. We see Imu take on this devilish appearance. Their appearance has all the features that you typically see from a demonic character. They have the wings, the trident, and the arrowed tail. The tail specifically, which we've already seen, which is when they killed Cobra and tried to take out Sabo during the reverie. And it was also theorized back then that it meant Imu was just a straight up devil. And the trident is also huge. At first I thought this would be because Imu's full own devil form is much larger, like the silhouette we saw of them back with everything that happened with Cobra and Sabo, because that form completely engulfed the staircase, or at least the bottom part of the staircase. Or maybe the trident is just big for the sake of being big, and there's no messing about here, right down to business, because Imu starts talking down to Killingham about his MMAs, his dream manifestations, and he says he's left a few nightmare holes open so these things will continue to be generated. He plants these holes on the ground and they will automatically pull from the giant's nightmares across the island to create a near endless source of these monsters. We already know he can bring forth more than one of each nightmare, so I guess this ability will just keep going until he chooses to stop it or he runs out of stamina. He also mentions how they have no concept of death since they are dreams, so he can just bring them back. Maybe he requires stamina to actually manifest them, but once they are manifested, they become detached, and from that point on, whatever they do after they are manifested won't affect his stamina. Maybe. I feel like that was a very confusing explanation, but I don't know any other way to word it. And then Imu commands Summers to take lead of the children. He's finally being able to heal now that Gabon was taken out. So it looks like whatever Gabon did to negate the regeneration has been removed since he was thrown off of the branch. And while he is healing, he is still in pain. So there are still some lingering after effects of whatever Gabon did. And Robin is really putting the other Straw Hats there to shame, because while they're still completely bound by the arrows, Robin, while also being bound but by thorns instead, she is actively trying to free herself as those thorns are cutting her up. And we see a small panel of the library, so we know where her priorities will be when she is free, if she is able to get herself free. So it really does look like it's going to burn down, which is surprising given how much of a point was made about those salvaged books, about all of that forbidden knowledge being in there. So I have ideas. The first is that the books do end up getting saved by either Robin pulling them out or the fire getting put out. The second is that we still have the Stella Vegapunk clone somewhere on the island, which was the one who went to Ohara and Elbaf after the Ohara incident to study the books in the first place. So what if that satellite clone still has that knowledge stored in it, since if they're the one who actually studied it, they wouldn't need any connection to Punk Records to access that knowledge. You know, they would just have that information anyway. And in come Dorry, Brogy and their crew who go to attack Emu, the star players of the Giants. Technically, you could say this is all their fault because it's these guys, the giant pirates, who were the ones going out into the world and making everyone shake and tremble. Supposedly Elbaf's mightiest of the mighty, these were the ones who terrorized nations, which caught the eye of the world government, which has ultimately led to this situation where they want to bring them under their control. Let's also remember how they arrived on Egghead and completely turned the situation around, gave the Straw Hats a means of escape, how they marched across the island like they owned the place, while the highest authority in the world, the five elders, stood across from them. Then let's talk about how their co-captains, Dorry and Brogy, went toe-to-toe with those very same global overseers, cut them apart, slammed them down, compared them to the beasts they hunted in the forests of Elbaf. Now those guys are going against the one single person who sits above even those elders right now. Whatever you think of the Giants or the giant warrior pirates, however you view everything that happened back in Little Garden with Mr. 3, they are on it to fight anyone. It's kind of crazy now that I am thinking about it, how those very same giants from 20 plus years ago are now going up against arguably the, well, not arguably, completely inarguably the biggest, most daunting figure in the entire story. Dorry and Brogy, love them. Since there is no ruling monarch currently in Elbaf, no king for them to bargain with, Emu themselves decides that Dorry and Brogy should become the new kings of the country. First off, thank you Emu for recognizing their greatness. Secondly, the main mission for the world government here is to bring the giants under their control, put a leash around their neck, use these warriors as mercenaries. And the fact Emu just showed up out of nowhere and made this decree essentially on their own, they are getting the job done here. No nonsense, making new kings, this is how I want it to be, so this is how it will be. They're talking as if the giants have already been brought under them, because from Emu's perspective, now that they are on the island, they're definitely thinking that with their presence it's already a foregone conclusion that they will be able to sort the situation out so that it fits with what they want. Now that I'm here, there's no way that the giants won't submit to me, so I will act accordingly. I sit atop of this very world, so I will act accordingly. But it's not as simple as them just saying Dorry and Brogy are the new kings and that's that. Brogy grabs Emu in his hand. This is what I'm talking about. There's no hesitation in these guys, or at least for Dorry and Brogy, and Emu commands Brogy to kill Yarul. They tell Brogy to behead him, raise his head up and declare himself and Dorry as the new kings. This genuinely feels like Emu is playing games, and this is gonna be a weird comparison, but in the Lego movie, the main antagonist Lord Business wanted to glue everyone in place to create his perfect world society. That's kind of what Emu is currently doing, molding the world to how they want it to be. So this, in my mind, is like one of the missing pieces of the puzzle that has now been revealed, because think about what Yarul has or represents that none of the other giants have, that's caused Emu to target them specifically. One idea is that this is a symbolic act because Yarul is the most respected giant in the country, so having other giants kill him would be massive. But the other idea is that Yarul is the only survivor from the 100 giant massacre inside the castle the day Harald was killed by Loki. Yarul knows the truth of that day, him and him alone, and that information can't come out no matter what. So this surely means that the sword lodged in his head totally messed up his memories of that day. Once the sword is pulled out, once Usopp pulls out Excalibur, the truth will come to light, and it will have greater ramifications than just the liberation of Loki. Because as for what that truth is, what if Imu used this very same ability, this contract, on Harald and the other giants, which is why Loki cut them all down. So Harald was originally a good man but was turned against his own people forcefully. As of right now, I do think Harald was the good and just king that he's been built up to be before Imu intervened. So it does very much sound like Loki had a one versus all situation. If this is really how that incident played out, that backstory is going to be insane. That fight must have been ridiculous. Forget the 100 giants. Harald was touted as a great warrior in his own right, so Loki versus a demonized version of Harald, and let's throw the 100 giants back in because that's a lot of giants, and we saw the state the castle ended up in. That's a fight I want to see. Although this is a step too far because it's not a fight at all, because Imu pulls out a damn grimoire straight out of Black Clover, from which they take out a dagger and a shotgun. I know this is a really intense situation and everything is going to hell literally, but the shotgun caught me off guard. This crazy demonic overlord has arrived and they pull out a double barrel shotgun. That's just so funny to me. Anyway, they stab Brogy's hand to loosen his grip and shoots his hand clean off. If I had a nickel for every time a character had their hand taken off in this arc, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. This book could be a storage thing, like a bottomless bag where Imu can just put whatever into it and access any of that stuff at any time. So like Caribou's bottomless swamp that he has thanks to his devil fruit, just not as disgusting. But I don't think that is what's happening here. Does the book let them just materialize stuff from their imagination? Maybe the imagination thing has to be an option purely because of how Luffy's powers work. They run on his imagination, so it may not be the case, but I feel like it has to be mentioned to cover all bases. What if the book is a portable version of the Abyss teleportation circle, where Imu can just bring through whatever is on the other side of it? Who knows? I don't. This now adds a whole new layer to what Imu is capable of and how their abilities work, and there's still more yet to come. Imu uses a technique called Devil's Contract on the 2 co-captains, which transforms them into demons, seemingly amplifies their strength, grants them immortality in exchange for a part of their lifespans. They both transform, but we see an extended process with Brogy where he is given the power of evil. A pentagram magic circle appears beneath him, which he is pulled into, and Imu uses a technique called Domi Reversi. It looks like the circle rotates as if he is stuck there, and I don't know how else to put this, but he's being dipped into hell, and he re-emerges with his own wings, these great big fangs, large horns. His axe is also double-edged now, so even his weapon was given an upgrade. Plus he can still use his detached hand. It's still separated from the rest of his body, but it's also still connected in some way. They've become huge, like ancient giant sized. Honestly, they're probably even bigger than that, but size in One Piece, as you know, is drawn super inconsistently. Not that I really care, to be honest. Like, I can get over it. It's not that big of a deal, but for this, even if they may look bigger than an ancient giant, I'll just say that they are supposed to be about the size of an ancient giant. Well, I don't know, because in this panel they look to be around the size of ancient giants, but in the final spread especially, they look enormous. But that might just be perspective, you know, dramatic effect. But he doesn't become a mindless slave. He still seems to retain his character, his laugh, that kind of loudness. His pride is probably the best word for it. He still retains his giant pride, it looks like, except he isn't on our side anymore, which isn't ideal. But with Dorry specifically, his form has one difference, which is that it doesn't have those black horns, while it looks like Brogy and all the other transformed giants do. And Emu's own appearance doesn't have them either, so I wonder if there's any significance to that. So the blue ogre and the red ogre in Japanese written as Oni, which can also be translated to demon. So these two are the blue Oni and red Oni in their purest forms. So this is a lot. Naturally, my first thought is to revisit the mural and see if there are any connections, any similarities that can be seen. But before that, with the devil's contract, it is just like the saying to make a deal with the devil, and that devil is Emu. And the domi reversi part in Latin, that means returning home. So does that mean Emu isn't giving them this demonic form, but instead only bringing out something that's always been there, returning home, returning to their roots or something, their true nature, maybe forcing out the darker side of them? Maybe it's based around the idea that humanity is, well, just living beings in general, I guess, sentient beings, their true nature is that of evil, like selfishness, self-indulgence, fighting all the time, that kind of thing. So when Emu says domi reversi, returning home, they're basically saying this is who you truly are. Also, the kanji for how domi reversi is written in the Japanese apparently means reverse dark control or something like that. So it could just be more simply Emu is just twisting their minds, their souls. At the end of the day, they are just taking away people's freedom, and there is one guy whose entire being is completely opposed to all of this. Also, the power of evil doesn't leave much speculation. It's not very ambiguous, although at the same time neither is the devil transformations. But that does work, you know, because like I said, Luffy is all about joy and freedom. The natural opposite to that would be this. And now to the mural, looking at the second world, the forest god tamed demons. There's the idea also that this forest god is the one who created the devil fruits, so that's some devil symbolism already there. Then there is the second part of that, tamed demons, which sounds exactly like what Emu is doing right now. So you could say Emu is the forest god itself, or that they have eaten the forest god devil fruit, which gave them this devilish appearance and all those abilities, just like how Luffy ate the sun god fruit. You know how Luffy's abilities are just so unique and so completely different to anything we've seen in the story. The same can be said with Emu here, with their own abilities being so wildly different to everything else as well, because they both ate the devil fruit of deities. Or again, Emu just straight up is the forest god. And at the end of the chapter, we have this army made up of not only Dorry and Brogy, but also a ton of other giants as well, who have also become demons. And on top of that, there are still Killingham's giant MMA dream monster manifestations, and even they've been given a power boost. You can see the giant fangs they have as well now. And Emu praises the giants, the power that they have, and speaks on their plans for this country. This country should not be destroyed but ruled, and they want to put this power to the test. So they really are just doing whatever the heck they feel like doing. It must have been their order originally to subdue this place, to subdue the giants. So maybe this was always the plan. Emu was always going to demonize them, but due to the circumstances, they've had to speed up the process a bit. This whole situation makes them seem so ridiculously overpowered, where on one hand it does make me excited because this is the kind of stuff I want to see from the endgame final boss, this insurmountable wall. Yet on the other hand, I wonder how Oda is gonna balance things out. How will we deal with this? And also, if Emu is capable of all of this by themselves, why haven't they just done everything by themselves before? What reason do they have for not leaving the castle? Arrogance, I do think, is a factor. Like, why do I have to do this when I have people who can do it for me? Comparing this to the egghead incident, Emu let all of that play out, and at the end of the day, when Luffy did escape, they were pissed and they did kill Saturn for it. So I guess in this case, they did say that the mission is taking too long, so they don't want to risk another catastrophic failure like that again. And in the very final panels, back in the village, while the other giants are begging him to flee, Yarul is not backing down. He may be old, but he is still a warrior of Elbaf. He himself was one of the co-captains of the giant warrior pirates before Dorry and Brogy. There's reason why he is so highly respected in the country. Not that I think his chances are that high though. And honestly, I don't know what Emu themselves is gonna do next. The only thing I can confidently say is that that in the next few chapters that Luffy fight is coming. So with this, now talking about what we didn't see instead of what we did, there was no look at the Underworld group, which makes me think their arrival into the Sun World will be an abrupt one, a surprise one. Like how Gaban entered the battle unannounced, those guys will make a huge entrance and save Yarul. Of course, Yarul cannot die. I would love it if Loki was the one who saves Yarul, because Loki himself would know this is the only guy with the intel who can free him. But at the same time, as much as I want him to get involved, I keep going back and forth over whether he actually will get involved. I am still leaning in the direction that he will, alongside all the others of course. Cause outside of Yarul, Dorry and Brogy may have been forced to become kings by Emu, but they are not the true rulers of this country, and it sounds very poetic that these false kings were to fight against and be taken down by the true princes of Elbaf, where Loki, still being injured, can make the fight a bit interesting, while Hyrudin can go through tremendous growth here by fighting two of Elbaf's strongest warriors. So in the next few chapters, the cavalry arrives and the two princes come to reclaim their father's throne.